Hey Peppermint Patty group. So we're back for another guided reading lesson, and I'm so glad that you're back here with me again this week to read another book, and I think you're really going to like the book that we're going to read this week. I know I do, so I hope you do too. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another making words activity that we've done a couple of times before, so hopefully it's getting even easier and you all know what to do with that. But we'll talk about it in a second. And then what we're going to do is we're going to read our book. It's called The Ugly Duckling. And before we read our book, we're going to learn 2 new strategies of what to do if we get stuck on a word. And then we'll read our book, and what we're going to talk about in our book this week is how the character changes throughout the story. So a couple of weeks ago, you all talked about the character traits and describing the character in the story. But this week, we're going to talk about how does the character change from the beginning of the story to the middle and to the end of the story. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's do another making words activity. So remember, all you need to do is make sure that you have all of these letters ready to go. And then once you do, then you can come back and we'll get started with our making words lesson. All right, so let's do our making words activity. And I don't know if I told you all this before, but making words is one of my favorite things to do with you guys because it is so helpful when it comes to remembering our letters and our letter sounds. It helps us remember hunks and chunks that we've learned and different word endings like ing and ed. But it's really cool to see how you can move just 1 or 2 letters around and make a whole new word. So I love doing making words because it really helps all of my first graders, and that's you, learn how to spell all of these words, and it helps you when you go to write and when you read. So let's go ahead and get started, and we're gonna actually learn a new hunk and chunk. So this is a hunk and chunk that the rest of the class hasn't learned yet. We will, but you guys are gonna be the first ones to learn it, okay? And this hunk and chunk, you're gonna find in all of our words that we make today. So remember that. All right, so let me teach you the phonics stance. I'll do it once so you can watch, and then we'll do it again so you can do it with me, okay? All right, so it goes like this. It's our O-I hunk and chunk because when we put those 2 letters together, it's gonna make a whole new sound. So you ready for it? All right, you ready? It goes O-I, oi, 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 O-I, oi, 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 in the middle of a word. Boink. And don't hit yourself too hard. We don't want you to hurt yourself. Just a little tap on your nose. All right, you ready to try it with me? All right, ready? O-I, oi, 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 O-I, oi, 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 in the middle of a word. Boink. Good job. All right, so remember that O-I makes that oi sound, okay? All right, so don't forget when we do making words, I'll give you the word. I'm going to tell you how many letters are in the word, but I don't want you to make the word until I what? Until I snap. And that way you can hear it, and then you can say it, and you'll hear it in a sentence too before you actually go to make it. All right, so our first word has 4 letters in it, and it's the word join. Join. Like, I am so glad that you could join me for a reading group this week. Everybody say join. Good. All right, go ahead and see if you can stretch that word out and make the word join. And don't forget, what hunk and chunk did we just talk about that makes that oi sound? Join. So if you need to pause it, and then press play when you're ready. All right, so let's see how we spell the word join. So when I stretch it out, I hear the the J sound. Very good. So I hear my J. Then I hear oin. I hear that oi. I know O-I, oi, oi, oi says that oi. O-I says oi. So I'm going to make that hunk and chunk. O-I, oin. What sound do I hear at the end? Good. The n, that in sound. Very good. So we spell join, J-O-I-N. So if you have that, great. If you don't, make sure that you fix that because we're going to add on or switch some things around. We're going to keep this word, but we're going to add on or change some things to make our new word, okay? All right, so let's do our next word. Our next word has 4 letters in it still, and you're only going to move 1 letter to make this new word. So our new word is coin. Coin. Like I found a coin on the ground and picked it up. Everybody say coin. Good. All right, now go ahead and see if you can figure out what letter do we need to switch to make the word coin. And you can pause it if you need to, and then press play when you're ready. All right, so let's look and see. So I hear a different beginning sound. I don't hear that j anymore. I hear k, coin. I hear the, what letter? K, like cat. Good job. And I still hear the oi, oin, and I still hear the N on the end. So that C, if I switch that J out for that C, it makes a whole new word. So coin is spelled C-O-I-N. Awesome job. All right, so let's do another word. So you're gonna keep this word and you're just gonna switch one letter, okay? So our new word has 4 letters in it still, and it's the word coil, coil. So like coil means like you kind of coil something up, like it kind of gets smaller and you kind of twist it around, like I'm gonna coil around something. So everybody say coil. Good, all right, go ahead and see if you can make that word coil. All right, so let's look and see. So I still hear the k sound at the beginning. K. So I think the C is good. Then I still hear our hunk and chunk, that O-I, oi sound. So k, oi, ol. Now my ending sound definitely sounds different. I don't hear that N sound anymore. What sound do we hear? Good, that L sound, which we know is that L. Awesome. So we spell coil, C-O-I-L. Good job. All right, our next word still has 4 letters in it, and you're still only gonna move 1 letter to make a whole new word, okay? So our new word is soil, soil. Like I went to plant my seed in the soil. Everybody say soil. Good, all right, go ahead and see if you can make the word soil. All right, so let's look and see. So I still hear that oil at the end. I still hear that same ending sound, but the beginning sound sounds different. So I hear s, oil. What letter makes that s sound? The S, very good. All right, so let me find that S and switch it out. And now we have oil, soil. So we spell soil, S-O-I-L. So again, we still have that O-I hunk and chunk, that oi sound in the middle. All right, so we have 2 more words. Our next word actually has 5 letters in it. And our new word is spoil, spoil. So I'm gonna give you a little hint. You're gonna keep all of these letters. You're just gonna add 1 letter in, and you just have to figure out what letter do I hear and where do I hear it in the word. So if I want to spoil somebody, that means I'm gonna give them all kinds of things and like everything that they want. That means I'm going to spoil them. So everybody say spoil. All right, see if you can figure out what letter do we hear and where does it go? Spoil. All right, so I don't know about you, but I still hear that S sound at the beginning. But I hear another letter, another sound after that S sound. I hear sp, sp, like I'm blending those sounds together. Well, what letter makes that P sound? Good, the P. So if I scoop this over and I bring my P, then I have the sp, that SP that makes that sp sound. And I still hear the oil at the end, that O-I and the L on the end. So we spell spoil, S-P-O-I-L. Very good. All right, we have 1 more word, and this is our mystery word. So do you have any guesses as to what you think our mystery word might be? What do you think? So we're gonna have 7 letters in it. That's my little hint. So if I'm gonna add 2 more letters, what word do you think it might be? And think about what letters we still have up here. All right, so here's our word. Our word is spoiled, spoiled. So, like if my food went bad, spoiled can mean two things. It can mean like you get everything that you want and you're spoiled, or it can mean like a food goes bad and it's not good anymore and you don't want to eat it. It's spoiled. So, the same word, but it can mean two totally different things. So, this time, let me talk about the food. So, I could say, the banana spoiled, so I couldn't eat it. That means like it went bad. So, everybody say spoiled. Good. All right. Go ahead and see if you can make that word spoiled. And think about, what do you hear at the end? All right. So I still hear the word spoil. I just hear an ending, a different ending to, not different, but I'm adding an ending to the word spoil. So what two letters, and actually it's a hunk and chunk that we're eventually going to learn, but what two letters make that D sound at the end? Like spoiled. You're right, we hear that D sound. I hope that you said that. But there's actually another letter that comes before that is part of that word ending. Does anybody know? Hopefully you said E, and if you didn't, that's okay because we're learning it. So if I add that E, it's still going to make just that D sound because ED can make three different sounds, and D is one of them. So here it's saying that D sound, spoiled. Very good. So we spell spoiled, S-P-O-I-L-E-D. Very good, you guys. That was our last word. You did so awesome with our Making Words activity. We will do more of these over the next few weeks, but hopefully you had fun with it and you guys did awesome. Remember, it's really important because it helps us with all of those letters and letter sounds and helps us hear those patterns in our words like the O-I, hunk and chunk. Remember, what sound does it make? Oi, oi, like boink. O-I, oi, oi, oi. Good job, you guys. Okay, so now is a really good time for you to take a break if you need to take a break. If you don't, then just let this play and you can keep going. But this is the last week that I'm going to actually pop in and say anything. So I'll still put the take a break picture up that you see, but then you'll know what to do, okay? So I'll meet you back here whenever you're ready to start reading our book and talk about our strategies. Okay, so let's talk about two new strategies that we can do if we get stuck on a word. Because remember, is it going to happen? Yes, it's going to happen. We're going to get stuck on a word and we need to figure out what can we do to figure out those words all on our own. Because does Miss Bell want you to just look to an adult to tell you the word? No, I don't want you to do that. I want you to use our strategies to try to figure out those words all on your own. And then if you're just really stuck, then you can have an adult help you, okay? So let's talk about two things that, honestly, you guys have probably already been doing these things. So the first one is this eagle eye. And eagle eye, the reason it's called eagle eye is because eagles have really good sight. They can see really, really well. And so when we talk about eagle eye, we're talking about looking at the picture. And a lot of times looking at the picture is going to help us figure out a word. So that's one strategy. Let's look at the other one. So the second strategy is called lips the fish. And the reason it's called that is because we want to look at that very first letter and think about the sound that it makes and get our lips ready to make that sound. So that's why it's called lips the fish, because you're getting your lips ready. And the whole reason that we want to use this strategy is because sometimes when you use this strategy and you look at that very first letter and you think about what sound it makes and you look at the picture, a lot of times you can just figure out the word from there. And so that helps with your fluency because it helps you not sit there and get stuck and have to keep stretching out, and then you kind of lose where you are and you kind of forget about the meaning and making sure that everything that you're reading makes sense. So lips the fish is a really good strategy to kind of keep that fluency going, which remember, that means not reading too fast, not reading too slow, and reading with expression, making it sound interesting. So lips the fish is a great strategy to use where you look at that first sound, think about the letter, think about the sound that it makes, look at the picture, and see what would make sense there. So we're going to practice these two, and I'll kind of show you as you're reading the book what those two look like, because a lot of times you'll use them together. So our book this week is called The Ugly Duckling. And The Ugly Duckling is a folk tale. And a folk tale is just a story that's been told, a really old story that's been told for years and years and years. So even a really long time ago, people were telling this story called The Ugly Duckling. And in The Ugly Duckling, there's a really important message or lesson that we're going to learn. And so I want you to kind of be thinking about that throughout the story and thinking about, what do you think the author was trying to teach you through this lesson? And the biggest thing, I'm going to pop in and we'll talk about different things, but the biggest thing I want you to think about is, how does the ugly duckling, our main character, how does he change from the beginning of the story to the middle of the story and to the end of the story? Because when you're finished, that's what you're going to go back and do on Sea Salt, okay? So we'll pop in and talk about some things, but think about two things while you're reading this folk tale. Remember, an old story. You're going to think about the lesson. So like, what is the author trying to teach you? And then think about how the character changes throughout the story. So let's go ahead and read our story, The Ugly Duckling. So something that strong readers do is they ask questions. So you might ask a question before you read the story. You might ask questions after you read the story. But strong readers will ask questions even while they're reading the story. So while I'm looking at these two pages, and after I read these two pages, I'm thinking and I'm wondering, why did the mother duck and the other animals on the farm think that the duckling was ugly? And I'm just thinking, why did they think that? So I'm kind of asking myself and kind of wondering what's going on in the story. So you can think about what you think the answer is to that question, but you can also think about, like, do you have any questions that you've thought of so far about what you've read? So if you think you have an answer to my question, or if you think you have another question that you've thought of, either think about it, or if there's somebody sitting close to you, then tell them, ask them that question, let them know what you're thinking. Okay, so let's practice our strategies, lips the fish and eagle eye. And remember, both of those a lot of times will go together. So a lot of times if you look at that first letter in a word and you look at the picture, it's going to help you figure out that word. So I'm going to read this page. I'm going to read page 10, and I'm going to pretend to get stuck on this word right here. And I want you to watch how I use lips the fish and I get my mouth ready to say that first sound. And I'm going to look at the picture to see if I can figure out what that word is without having to stretch the whole thing out. Okay? All right, so let's get started. So just kind of follow along as I read. All summer, the animals on the farm laughed at the ugly duckling. The ugly duckling became, okay, I don't know what that word is. So let me get my lips ready. I see an S, and I know the S sound is S. So let me look at the picture. What would make sense? The ugly duckling became sadder. Oh, because I see that the duckling in the picture looks sad. His face is kind of down. He doesn't have a smile on his face. His face looks kind of sad. So let me see if that makes sense. The ugly duckling became sadder and sadder. That makes sense. Then it says, finally, the ugly duckling ran away. So I made my lips get ready to make that sound, that S sound, and then I looked at the picture to see what would make sense that would start with that S sound. So I didn't have to stretch out the whole word, and it helped me read a little bit quicker and not too fast, not too slow, that kind of thing. So definitely make sure that you use lips the fish and eagle eye if you get stuck on a word. Those are two really good choices. And I think we have talked about eagle eye before, but that's okay because it always goes together with that lips the fish strategy. So, we have talked over the last few weeks a lot about what strong readers do when they read. And one thing that I think I've mentioned before, but we haven't talked a whole lot about, and it's really, really important, is reading with expression. So, we've talked a little bit about how I don't want to sound like a robot when I read because that would be really boring to me, but also the people that I'm reading to. And so I want to read with expression so that it's interesting and it helps me understand the story a little bit better. So I'm going to show you how on this page, I'm going to read with really good expression. So that means that I'm going to make my voice sound like I think that the character would sound. And I'm going to look and make sure if there's an exclamation point, so that punctuation mark that looks like this, then I'm going to make my voice sound really excited. And if I see a question mark, then I'm going to make my voice go up because I'm asking something. So watch and listen how I show expression when I read this page, okay? And you can kind of follow along with me as I read. "Come on," said the white birds. "Come and swim with us." "What kind of birds are you?" asked the ugly duckling. "We are swans," said the swans. "Just like you." So do you see how I changed my voice to make my voice sound different? So when I was talking about or talking like the other swans, I made it sound kind of like this. And when I was thinking about the ugly duckling, I made my voice kind of sound like this. I made it sound a little different. Yours might be different than mine. You might have a different idea of what the characters would sound like than I do, and that's okay. But make sure that you change your voice and make it really interesting in how you think the characters would sound. And don't forget to pay attention to that punctuation too. So if there's an exclamation point, then you want your voice to sound excited, like "just like you," not "just like you." That wouldn't make any sense, and that would be really boring if I read like that. And then if there's a question mark, make your voice go up because you're asking something. So take a second, practice this page, and see if you can read that page with a really good expression. So before we talk about our book a little bit, I just want to tell you all have done such a great job, and I know we have talked about a ton of different things in these first few weeks of our guided reading group. So I'm really proud of you all. We've done so much work. You all have learned so much already, and I'm super proud of you. So now let's talk a little bit about our book. So I don't know about you, but there was a really big message or lesson that I felt like the author was trying to teach me. And I want you to think about it. What do you think the author was trying to teach you? So take a second and pause the video and think about it. Or if there's somebody close by, then turn and tell them. Turn and talk and tell them what you think the lesson was in the story. All right, so let's talk about the lesson. So I know that the ugly duckling felt really bad about himself because the animals and the mother duckling were not very nice to them, right? Not very nice to him. They were making fun of him, thought that he was ugly just because he was different. And so that tells me that you shouldn't make fun of people. Even if they're different than you, it doesn't mean that they're not wonderful in their own way. So I felt like the author was teaching me that you shouldn't make fun of people. It's not nice. And you want to be kind to people, even if they're different than you are. So maybe you thought of that, maybe you thought of a different lesson, and that's okay. But remember, every time we read a fiction story, most of the time there's going to be a lesson or a message that the author's trying to teach you. So you can kind of be thinking about that as you read other stories too. The other thing I want you to think about is, how did the character change? Because that's what you're going to go back to Seesaw and do, is you're going to tell me, how did the ugly duckling change from the beginning of the story to the middle of the story and to the end of the story? So don't forget to go back to Seesaw and do that. But you guys did a great job this week, and I'll meet you back here for another book next week.